Commander Ji-won stared at the viewport of her ship, the Defiant Heritage. The stars looked beautiful out here on the edge of Council space, but she knew beauty could be dangerous. Her ship was old, 40 years old to be exact. The hull had patches welded over patches. The paint was faded and chipped. When the engines fired, they made a grinding noise that shouldn't be there. But this was what Earth had to offer, and Ji-won was proud to command it. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. They all knew their ship was outdated. Every other species in the Galactic Council flew vessels that looked like art pieces, smooth and shining. Human ships looked like floating scrapyards by comparison. But they worked mostly, and that had to be enough. Ji-won's second officer, Lieutenant Bora, turned from her console. Her face was tight with concern. "Commander, we have contacts. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They're big." Ji-won felt her stomach tighten. "Identification?" "Drathan Empire, ma'am. It's a scout fleet. 15 vessels. They're positioning themselves in a combat formation. The Drathans. Everyone called them the Dragon Empire because they looked like giant reptiles and acted like ancient conquerors. They had been pushing against Council borders for months, testing weaknesses. And now they were here in Earth's assigned patrol sector. "Hail them," Ji-won ordered. "Let's see what they want." The main screen flickered. A massive reptilian face appeared, covered in dark green scales with yellow eyes that held nothing but contempt. War Prince Corvin. Ji-won had read about him in intelligence reports. He was ambitious, cruel, and looking for glory. "Human vessel." Corvin's voice was deep and mocking. "I am War Prince Corvin of the Drathan Empire. I see the Council has sent their weakest members to guard this sector. How disappointing." Ji-won kept her voice steady. "This is Commander Ji-won of Earth Fleet. You are in Council space, War Prince." "State your intentions," Corvin laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Intentions? I intend to show the Council how weak they have become. Look at your ship, human. It is held together with rust and desperation. I can see the repair welds from here. Your engines burn with the chemical fires of primitives. You do not belong among the civilized species." Behind Corvin, Ji-won could see his bridge. It was pristine, filled with holographic displays and gleaming metal. His ship was a work of art compared to hers. She felt anger rise in her chest but pushed it down. "We belong here as much as anyone," Ji-won said. "The Council accepted Earth. We have every right to patrol this sector." "Rights?" Corvin leaned forward. "Rights are taken by the strong, not given to the weak. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your weapons are toys. Your armor is paper. I could destroy your entire squadron without losing a single ship." Ji-won's tactical officer, Ensign Hyunwoo, whispered urgently. "Commander, his ships are powering weapons. Their targeting systems are locking onto our fleet." "War Prince," Ji-won said carefully. "Attacking Council vessels would be an act of war. The entire Council would respond." Corvin smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Would they? Or would they decide that one small sector, guarded by rusted human ships, is not worth fighting for? I think we both know the answer. I am giving you 48 hours to withdraw from this sector. Take your rust buckets back to Earth. If you are still here when time expires, I will scatter your debris across the stars." The screen went dark. The bridge was silent. Ji-won looked at her crew. They were afraid, but they were not running. Good. She was proud of them. "Send a priority message to Earth Fleet Command," Ji-won ordered. "Tell them everything. We need reinforcements and we need orders." The hours that followed were tense. The Drathan fleet held position, not attacking but not leaving. They just waited like predators watching wounded prey. Ji-won's squadron of 5 ships maintained their patrol pattern, but everyone knew they were hopelessly outmatched. The response from Earth came 8 hours later. Admiral Taemin's face appeared on the screen. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had seen Earth's struggles to join the galactic community. He knew exactly how weak humanity looked to the rest of the Council. "Commander Ji-won," Taemin said, "I have spoken with the Council representatives. They are debating what to do. Some want to send reinforcements. Others say we should withdraw to avoid escalation." Ji-won felt frustration boil over. "Sir, if we withdraw, the Drathans will see us as cowards. They will push further. This will not end with one sector." "I know," Taemin said quietly, "but our fleet is small and old. We cannot win a direct fight with the Dragon Empire, not with what we have now." "Then what do we do, sir?" Taemin was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something strange. Perhaps it is time to wake the old guard. Sir? I don't understand. You will. Hold your position, Commander. Help is coming. It may not be what you expect, but it is coming. Taemin out. The transmission ended. Ji-won stared at the dark screen, confused. What was the old guard? She had never heard that term before. Ensign Hyunwoo approached her quietly. Commander, I found something strange. I was running diagnostics on our archive systems and discovered some old files. They mentioned something called the Forgotten Fleet. What is that? I don't know exactly. The files are heavily encrypted and fragmented, but they reference ships from before we joined the Council. Before first contact with aliens, there are mentions of something called IRON-13. Ji-won frowned. What kind of designation is that? I don't know, ma'am. But whatever it was, it scared people. There are damage reports that don't make sense. One file mentions IRON-13 being destroyed in combat. But then there are reports of it fighting again a month later. And again after that. It's like it couldn't be killed. That doesn't make sense. No, ma'am. But the files are real. Someone went to a lot of trouble to bury them. Ji-won thought about Admiral Taemin's words. The old guard, could this IRON-13 be part of it? Far away from the border, in orbit around Earth, something was happening. In a section of the lunar shipyards that had been sealed for decades, heavy doors were opening. Inside, floating in darkness, was a ship. It was huge, bigger than any current human vessel. Its hull was angular and brutal, covered in thick armor plating. There were no elegant curves, no artistic design. It looked like a weapon, plain and simple. Engineers were gathering, called from retirement or pulled from other assignments. They stared at the ship with a mixture of awe and fear. Many had heard the stories. Some had even served on similar vessels during the Unification Wars, back when humanity fought itself before the aliens came. Captain Somin stood before the vessel. She was old now, her hair gray, but her eyes were sharp. She had fought on ships like this one. She knew what they could do. Can we wake it? She asked the chief engineer, a grizzled man named Dae-hyun. Dae-hyun walked around the ship, running his scanner over the hull. It's been asleep for 60 years. Systems are cold, but it was built to last. These old war machines, they don't die easy. How long to bring it online? Properly. 6 months. But I don't think we have 6 months. We have 36 hours. Dae-hyun whistled low. Then we don't bring it online properly. We wake it angry. Somin smiled. It was not a kind smile. That works. On the border, Commander Ji-won watched the countdown clock. 30 hours until the Drathan deadline. Her crew was ready to fight, even knowing they would probably die. She was proud of them. They were human. They would not run. But in the back of her mind, she wondered about Admiral Taemin's words. About the old guard, about IRON-13, something was coming. She just hoped it would arrive in time. Captain Somin walked through the corridors of IRON-13, her footsteps echoing in the darkness. Emergency lights flickered on as she moved, activated by motion sensors that still worked after 6 decades. The air smelled stale and metallic. Everything was covered in dust, but underneath that dust was steel. Thick, heavy steel. Chief Engineer Dae-hyun followed behind her, his team spreading through the ship to assess what needed to be done. He kept muttering to himself as his scanner picked up readings. Unbelievable. The reactor core is still solid. The armor plating hasn't degraded at all. They built these things to survive the end of the world. That's exactly what they were built for, Somin said quietly. She remembered. Not this ship specifically, but others like it. The Unification Wars had been brutal. Humanity's darkest time. Colony worlds fighting Earth. Earth factions fighting each other. Ships built not to explore but to destroy. They reached the bridge. It was different from modern human ships. No comfortable chairs or holographic displays. Everything was physical, with manual controls and backup systems. The captain's chair was just bolted metal with minimal padding. This was a warship, nothing more. Somin sat in the chair and felt something shift inside her. Memories of younger days, of battles she tried to forget. She looked at Dae-hyun. Tell me honestly, can we do this? Dae-hyun pulled up a display on his portable terminal. The main reactor is intact. We can start it. The engines are old-style fusion drives, simple but effective. We can get them running. The weapons are magnetic accelerators, basically giant railguns. If we can get power to them, they'll fire. The problem is everything else. Define everything else. Life support is going to be minimal. No artificial gravity will be in 0G the whole time. Navigation systems are primitive by today's standards, mostly manual calculation. Communication arrays need complete replacement, but we don't have time for that. We'll have to use the emergency backup systems. And the armor? What about the armor? It's 3 meters thick in some places. Layered composite with internal bulkheads every 10 meters. This ship was designed to take hits that would vaporize modern vessels. The problem is it makes the ship slow and hard to maneuver. We'll be a big, slow target. Soman smiled. Slow is fine. We just need to get there and hit hard. Word spread through Earth fleet about the old ship being reactivated. Admiral Taman sent out a quiet call for volunteers. He didn't give many details, just said they were crewing a vessel from the Unification Wars. It was dangerous. It might be a one-way trip. Only experienced crew should apply. Within 6 hours, they had 3 times more volunteers than needed. Many were veterans like Salman, people who remembered the old days. But younger crew members volunteered too. Ensign Hyunwoo from Commander Jiwon's ship requested transfer. When asked why, he said simply, "Because someone needs to remember what we were before we tried to be like everyone else." The crew arrived at the lunar shipyard in shuttles. They stared at IRON-13 in silence. It was ugly compared to modern ships. No smooth lines, no elegant design. It looked like someone had taken a rectangle and covered it in armor plates and gun barrels. But there was something powerful about it, something that made them stand straighter. Lieutenant Minho, the gunnery officer, walked along the outer hull in a work suit. He counted the weapon ports. 32 main batteries. Each one fires solid tungsten rounds at .1 light speed, plus another 60 secondary guns. This thing is a flying weapons platform. Will they work? Someone asked. They're mechanical systems. No complex targeting computers to fail. Just magnets, power, and metal. Yeah, they'll work. Inside the ship, Daehyun's team was racing against time. They ripped out damaged systems and bypassed others. Safety protocols were disabled. Why worry about safety when you're heading into combat anyway? Power conduits were rerouted directly, losing efficiency but gaining speed. The reactor was the biggest challenge. It had been shut down for 60 years. Starting it cold was dangerous. But Daehyun had done dangerous things before. If this goes wrong, we'll create a small sun right here in the shipyard, one of his engineers said nervously. Then don't let it go wrong, Daehyun replied. He activated the startup sequence. The reactor began to wake. Deep in the ship's core, fusion reactions began. Power flowed through conduits that hadn't carried electricity in decades. Lights flickered on throughout the vessel. The hum of active systems filled the corridors. On the bridge, displays came to life. Captain Soman watched as system after system showed green status. Not all systems, but enough. She opened a ship-wide channel. All crew, this is Captain Soman. Most of you don't know me. I'm old and I flew on ships like this when Earth was still tearing itself apart. This vessel is called IRON-13. It earned its name by refusing to die. It was declared destroyed 3 times during the Unification Wars. 3 times it came back. The ship's motto is Iron Never Forgets. Today we're going to remind the Dragon Empire that Earth doesn't forget either. She paused, looking at the faces of her crew on the monitor. Young and old, all of them volunteers. All of them knowing this might be their last mission. This ship is not fast. It's not pretty. It's not advanced. But it was built for one purpose, to take punishment and deliver it back twice as hard. The Drathans think our modern fleet is weak. They're right. But IRON-13 isn't part of the modern fleet. This is old Earth back when we built things to last forever. Let's show them what that means. The crew cheered. It echoed through the ship's corridors, the sound of humans ready to fight. Meanwhile, at the border, Commander Jiwon watched her countdown clock. 20 hours left. The Drathan fleet hadn't moved, just waited like patient hunters. She had received a coded message from Admiral Taman. Help is coming. Hold position. Do not engage unless fired upon. She trusted the Admiral, but she didn't understand. What help could possibly arrive in time? Back at the shipyard, IRON-13 was ready to move. Not fully repaired, not at full capability, but functional. Daehyun gave his report to Captain Soman. Main reactor at 70%. That's all we can safely push it. Engines will fire, but don't expect any speed records. Weapons are operational. We have full ammunition load. Life support is minimal but adequate. Armor is intact, thank God for that. Communication is going to be spotty, but we can broadcast and receive. We're as ready as we're going to be. Soman nodded. Release docking clamps. Prepare to move. The massive ship shuddered as clamps that had held it for 60 years released. Thrusters fired, pushing the vessel away from the dock. The fusion engines ignited and IRON-13 began to move. It was not graceful. It accelerated slowly, like pushing a mountain. But once it was moving, it kept moving. The ship headed toward the faster-than-light jump point that would take it to the border sector. On Earth, Admiral Taman watched the ship depart. A younger officer stood beside him, watching the display with confusion. "Sir, why did we keep that ship? Why not scrap it decades ago?" Taman was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because someone knew that one day we might need to remember who we were. Before we joined the Council, before we tried to fit in, we were survivors. We fought each other for 100 years and didn't go extinct. That takes a special kind of stubborn. IRON-13 represents that. It's a reminder that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our refusal to quit." At the border, War Prince Corvin received an interesting report from his sensors officer. "My prince, there is a vessel approaching from Earth space. It's slow but big, very big." Corvin looked at the tactical display. "Identification? Nothing in our database. The energy signature is strange, very old-style fusion drive. The hull composition is primitive. Heavy metal alloys, layered construction. It appears to be a museum piece, my prince." Corvin laughed. "The humans are sending antiques to fight us? This is perfect. We will destroy their ancient relic in front of their modern fleet. It will crush their spirit completely. Prepare to broadcast our victory across all council channels." His bridge crew joined his laughter. An old ship with primitive technology against the might of the Dragon Empire? It would be a massacre. A glorious one-sided massacre. But none of them had fought in the unification wars. None of them understood what humanity had been like when fighting for survival. They were about to learn. IRON-13 jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading toward the border. Inside, the crew made final preparations. They checked weapons, reviewed damage control procedures, and said quiet prayers to whatever gods they believed in. Captain Soman sat in her chair, looking at the tactical display. She knew what was coming. This would be ugly. People would die. But the Drathans had made a mistake. They thought old meant weak. They were about to discover that iron doesn't get weaker with age. It just gets harder. IRON-13 dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the disputed sector. The transition was rough, the old ship shuddering as it re-entered normal space. Captain Soman gripped the arms of her chair, watching as the display stabilized. "Status report," she ordered. Lieutenant Bora, who had transferred from Commander Jiwon's ship along with Ensign Hyunwoo, checked her console. "All systems holding. Reactor is stable. Weapons are charged and ready. We are 30,000 kilometers from the Drathan fleet position." On the tactical display, Soman could see everything. Commander Jiwon's small squadron of 5 human ships, trying to look brave despite being hopelessly outgunned, and the Drathan fleet, 15 warships arranged in a Predator's formation. They looked beautiful on the sensors, sleek and deadly. "Open all communication channels," Soman ordered. "I want everyone to hear this." The communication officer nodded. "Channels open, Captain." Broadcasting on all frequencies, Soman stood from her chair. She thought about what to say. Something that would matter. Something that would be remembered. "This is Captain Soman of the Earth vessel IRON-13 to all Drathan forces. You have mocked our rust. You have called our ships obsolete. You are correct. This vessel is old. It was built 60 years ago when humanity was fighting itself. It uses technology you consider primitive. But iron doesn't age the way you think. It doesn't become weaker. It endures. You have one chance to withdraw from Council space. This is your only warning." Silence followed her words. Then War Prince Corvin's face appeared on the main screen. He was smiling, showing all his sharp teeth. "The museum sends its prize exhibit. This is wonderful. Tell me, human, does your ancient ship even have proper weapons? Or will you throw metal scraps at us?" "We throw metal," Soman said calmly. "Very fast metal," Corvin laughed. "I will enjoy destroying you personally. My fleet will focus fire on your relic. We will cut it apart, piece by piece. Your sacrifice will teach the Council not to challenge the Dragon Empire with garbage." The screen went dark. On the tactical display, the Drathan ships began moving into attack formation. Commander Jiwon, watching from the Defiant Heritage, opened a private channel to IRON-13. "Captain Soman, you can't fight 15 ships alone. Let us help." "Stay back, Commander," Soman replied. "Your ships are needed to protect this sector after we're done. Besides, 15 to 1 is almost fair odds." "Almost fair for them, you mean?" Soman smiled. Exactly. On IRON-13's bridge, Ensign Hunwoo was coordinating with the engineering teams. He had learned more about this ship in the past day than in his entire academy training. The design philosophy was completely different from modern vessels. Everything had backups, and those backups had backups. If the main computer failed, there were manual controls. If power conduits were cut, there were redundant paths. The ship was built expecting to be damaged, expecting systems to fail and still keep fighting. Lieutenant Minho sat at the gunnery station, his hands moving over the controls. Unlike modern targeting systems with their computer-assisted precision, this was old school. He had to calculate trajectories manually, accounting for relative velocities and distances. But the weapons themselves were simple: magnetic accelerators that launched solid metal slugs using enormous electromagnetic force. No complex guidance systems, no exotic particles, just kinetic energy. Gunnery reports ready, Captain, Minho announced. All main batteries loaded and charged. Hold fire until they commit, Soman ordered. Let them come to us. The Drathan fleet advanced. Their ships were fast, powered by exotic matter drives that bent space around them. They began firing while still at long range. Plasma lances, burning at temperatures that could melt normal ship hulls, lashed out across space. The first shots hit IRON-13's forward armor. On the bridge, damage control displays lit up. But the reports weren't as bad as expected. The plasma weapons scorched the outer armor plating, creating glowing patches of superheated metal, but the armor was so thick, layered with heat-dissipating materials, that the beams didn't penetrate. They just made the surface glow. Daehyun's voice came over the internal comm. Captain, their energy weapons are designed for modern ships with shield generators and light armor. Our armor is too thick and too primitive. It's just absorbing the heat. War Prince Corvin saw the same thing on his tactical displays. His weapons officer reported in confusion. My prince, our plasma lances are not penetrating. The human vessel's armor is too massive. It's like shooting at a solid block of metal. Then use the particle beams. Focus fire on one section. The Drathan ships changed tactics. Particle beam weapons, which could normally cut through modern shields like paper, converged on IRON-13's forward section. The concentrated fire was intense enough to light up space with radiation. Inside IRON-13, the crew felt the ship shake. Temperature readings on the forward sections climbed. Some outer plates began to melt and boil away, but underneath were more layers, and underneath those were even more layers. Forward armor at 85%, Bora reported, hull integrity holding. Soman watched the Drathan ships closing the distance. They were being cautious, trying to wear down the human vessel from range. That was their mistake. IRON-13 wasn't built for range dueling. It was built for close-range slugfests. All power to engines, Soman ordered. Close the distance. The old fusion drives burned brighter. IRON-13 began accelerating toward the Drathan fleet. It wasn't fast by modern standards, but it was massive and it was moving. Corvin saw the human ship approaching and laughed. The fool is charging us. Helm, maintain distance. Continue firing. But his helmsman reported a problem. My prince, we are maintaining distance, but the human vessel is not slowing down. It's continuing to accelerate. That's impossible. Those primitive drives cannot produce enough thrust to. They're not using just the drives, my prince. They're venting atmosphere and excess coolant from the rear. They're using everything as reaction mass. Corvin stared. The human ship was literally throwing away anything that could produce thrust, using water, air, anything to build momentum. It was insane. It was also working. IRON-13 closed to weapons range. Soman gave the order. Minho, you may fire when ready. Lieutenant Minho had been waiting for this moment. He had already calculated the firing solutions. 32 main magnetic accelerators were aimed at the Drathan fleet. He pressed the firing control. The ship shuddered as all 32 guns fired at once. Tungsten carbide slugs, each weighing several tons, accelerated to 10% the speed of light. The electromagnetic pulses from the guns lit up every sensor in the area. The slugs crossed the distance in seconds. The Drathan saw them coming but couldn't believe what their sensors showed. Solid projectiles? In modern space combat? Their point defense systems were designed to shoot down missiles and energy torpedoes. They weren't calibrated for solid slugs moving at relativistic speeds. A few of the defense systems managed to fire, but hitting a solid piece of metal moving that fast was nearly impossible. The first slug hit a Drathan cruiser amidships. The kinetic energy was incredible. The slug punched completely through the ship, entering the bow and exiting the stern. The shock wave from the impact propagated through the ship's structure, causing catastrophic failure. The cruiser broke apart, spilling atmosphere and crew into space. 3 more slugs hit other ships. One struck a destroyer's engine section, detonating the exotic matter containment system. The resulting explosion was visible from Commander Jiwan's ship, 30,000 kilometers away. Another slug clipped a frigate, tearing off a third of the vessel. The frigate spun wildly out of control. The Drathan fleet scattered in panic. 4 ships were destroyed or crippled in the first salvo. Corvin stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "How?" he whispered. "How can primitive weapons do this?" His science officer understood. "My prince, our defenses are designed for modern warfare. Energy weapons, guided missiles, plasma torpedoes. Nobody uses kinetic projectiles anymore because they're too simple, too hard to aim. But our shields and armor are optimized against energy, not against solid mass. And at those velocities, the kinetic energy is enormous." Corvin felt something he hadn't felt in years: fear. But he pushed it down and replaced it with rage. "All ships concentrate fire on that human vessel. I want it destroyed now." The remaining 11 Drathan ships focused all their weapons on IRON-13. Plasma lances, particle beams, and missiles converged on the human dreadnought. The concentrated firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. IRON-13 took the full force of the assault. Armor plates glowed white-hot and boiled away. Entire sections of outer hull were stripped off. Missiles impacted, creating craters in the thick armor. The ship shuddered continuously under the barrage. On the bridge, damage reports flooded in. Forward armor down to 60%. Port side has multiple breaches. Deck 7 is venting atmosphere. Fire in engineering section 3. Soman listened calmly. Seal the breach sections. Damage control teams to engineering. Helm, maintain course. Gunnery, reload and prepare for second salvo. Daehyun's voice came over the comm, strained but steady. "Captain, we're taking a beating, but the inner structure is holding. This is what the ship was designed for. We can take more." Bora looked at Somin with concern. "Captain, if we stay in this kill zone, they'll eventually crack our armor." "Then we don't stay," Somin replied. "Helm, full acceleration. Take us right into their formation." The helmsman hesitated for just a second, then pushed the controls forward. IRON-13 accelerated, plowing directly toward the Drathan fleet. Corvin watched in horror. "The mad human is charging us. All ships evade." But IRON-13 was already among them. The old dreadnought passed between 2 Drathan destroyers, so close that its bulk filled their viewports. Minho fired the secondary guns at point-blank range. The destroyers were torn apart. Now the battle became chaos. The Drathans couldn't focus fire without hitting each other. IRON-13 was in their midst, a wounded beast surrounded by faster predators. But those predators couldn't kill it, and every time it turned to face one, it killed. Soman felt the ship shake as another hit impacted the stern. She knew they couldn't last forever. The armor was being stripped away. Systems were failing. But they had already won. 4 enemy ships destroyed, 2 more crippled. The Drathans had expected an easy victory. Instead, they were losing. War Prince Corvin made his decision. If he couldn't win, he would at least die with honor. Helm set collision course with the human vessel. Maximum speed. His flagship, the Eternal Fire, turned toward IRON-13 and accelerated. Lieutenant Bora saw it first on her tactical display. The Drathan flagship, the Eternal Fire, was accelerating directly toward IRON-13. There was no tactical reason for the maneuver. It wasn't trying to get a better firing angle. It was coming straight at them. "Captain, the enemy flagship is on a collision course. Impact in 40 seconds. Captain Soman understood immediately. War Prince Corvin had decided that if he couldn't destroy them normally, he would ram them. His ship was smaller but traveling much faster. The collision would likely destroy both vessels. It was a desperate move, but it would achieve his goal of removing the troublesome human ship from the battle. "Can we evade?" Soman asked. The helmsman checked his controls and shook his head. "Not in time. We're too slow and they're too fast. Even if we fire all thrusters, we'll only move a few hundred meters." Not enough. Soman felt strangely calm. She had known this mission might be one way. She looked around the bridge at her crew. They were scared, but none of them were panicking. They were doing their jobs right up to the end. "All hands," she announced over the ship-wide comm. "Brace for collision. Seal all bulkheads. Emergency teams to crash positions. It has been an honor serving with you." Across the ship, crew members grabbed hold of anything bolted down. In engineering, Daehyun ordered his people to secure the reactor. If the core was breached in the collision, the resulting explosion would be catastrophic. In the weapons bay, Lieutenant Minho locked down the magnetic accelerators and hoped the impact wouldn't detonate their ammunition. Commander Jiwon watched from her ship, helpless. She wanted to intervene to do something, but there was nothing her smaller vessel could do. She could only watch as the two ships rushed toward each other. "Come on," she whispered. "Survive. Like you always do." The eternal fire struck IRON-13 at tremendous speed. The bow of the Drathan flagship crumpled like paper against the layered armor of the human dreadnought. But momentum and mass still mattered. The impact drove deep into IRON-13's forward section, crushing armor plates and internal compartments. The sound was incredible, a screaming, tearing noise that echoed through both ships. Metal warped and broke. Entire decks were compressed or ripped open to vacuum. The two vessels became locked together, their momentum carrying them through space in a tumbling spin. On IRON-13's bridge, the impact threw everyone against their restraints. Displays shattered. Conduits burst, spraying sparks. The lights went out, replaced by red emergency lighting. Selman felt pain in her ribs where the crash restraint had caught her. She tasted blood in her mouth. "Damage report," she gasped. Bora's console was half destroyed, but she managed to pull up diagnostics on a backup screen. "Forward sections 1 through 5 are compromised. We've lost atmosphere in those areas. Hull breach extends to Deck 12. Casualties are significant. The reactor? Still online. Daehyun's team managed to keep it stable." Selman looked at the external view. The Eternal Fire's bow was embedded in their forward hull. Both ships were locked together, spinning slowly through space. But as she watched, she realized something. The Drathan flagship had crumpled on impact. Its beautiful, elegant structure wasn't designed to hit something this solid. It had broken itself against IRON-13's armor like a sword striking an anvil. Status of the enemy flagship? Hyunwoo worked his damaged console. "Their forward sections are completely destroyed. I'm reading massive power fluctuations. Their exotic matter containment is failing. They have maybe 2 minutes before it detonates. Can we separate from them? Not in time. When their containment goes, we'll be caught in the explosion." Selman thought quickly. 2 minutes. The Drathan flagship was dying, its reactor about to explode. If they were still attached when that happened, the blast would finish what the collision started. But there was another option. A desperate, dangerous option. "Minho, are any of the forward guns still operational?" The gunnery officer checked his systems. "Main battery 6 and 7. They're damaged but might fire one more time. Target the Eternal Fire's reactor section. Point blank range. Can you do it?" Minho understood what she was asking. Fire into the ship that was currently attached to them. The explosion would hurt, possibly destroy them. But if they did nothing, they would definitely die. "I can do it, Captain." "Then fire when ready." Minho activated the 2 remaining forward guns. The targeting was simple at this range. The Drathan reactor section was less than 50 meters away, visible through the torn hull sections. He pressed the firing control. The magnetic accelerators fired. The recoil pushed the already spinning ships into a faster tumble. 2 tungsten carbide slugs crossed the short distance in a fraction of a second. They punched through the weakened Drathan hull and struck the exotic matter containment system. The result was immediate and catastrophic. The exotic matter, which bent space to power the Drathan drives, was released from containment. It didn't explode in the conventional sense. Instead, space itself seemed to tear apart at that point. A pulse of energy expanded outward. Not quite an explosion, but more like reality breaking down and rebuilding itself. The blast wave hit IRON-13 like a hammer. The forward sections, already damaged, were simply erased. The ship's spin became a violent tumble. More armor peeled away. Internal bulkheads collapsed. But deep inside, the core structure held. The ship was built in layers, designed to lose outer sections and still maintain integrity. The Eternal Fire was not so lucky. The explosion consumed the flagship from within. The elegant vessel broke apart into glowing fragments that scattered across space. IRON-13 tumbled through the debris field, battered but still intact. On the bridge, Somin slowly regained consciousness. Her head was bleeding. Her arm was definitely broken. But she was alive. "Status," she managed to say. Bora was also injured, blood running down her face from a cut on her forehead. "We're still here," Forward sections 1 through 8 are gone. Just gone. We're venting atmosphere from multiple breaches. Power is at 30%. Weapons are offline, but the reactor is still running and the core structure is intact. Casualties? Bora's voice was quiet. 47 dead. Many more injured. All casualties were in the forward sections. Someone closed her eyes for a moment, mourning those lost. 47 people who volunteered to crew this old ship, knowing the risks. They had given everything, and the enemy? Hyunwoo checked his console. The Eternal Fire is destroyed. No survivors detected. The remaining Drathan ships they're retreating. All of them. They're jumping to faster than light and leaving the sector. Soman felt surprise. They're retreating, why? I think we broke them, Captain. They came here expecting an easy fight against obsolete human ships. Instead, we destroyed their flagship and 6 other vessels. They're scared. Commander Jiwon's voice came over the communication channel. IRON-13, this is Commander Jiwon. We're reading severe damage to your vessel. Do you need assistance? We're still floating, Commander, Soman replied. And the Drathans are running. I'd say the mission is successful. You're insane. You know that, right? Soman laughed, then winced as pain shot through her broken ribs. Probably. But we're alive. This old rust bucket is still here. Across the sector, the battle was over. 4 Drathan ships had been destroyed in the first salvo. 2 more had been torn apart when IRON-13 charged into their formation. The Eternal Fire was scattered debris, and 1 destroyer had been crippled by secondary fire. The remaining 7 ships had fled. In exchange, IRON-13 had lost its entire forward section and nearly a quarter of its crew. But it was still there, still broadcasting, its reactor still humming steadily. Jiwon's squadron moved closer to provide assistance. Damage control teams transferred over to help seal breaches and treat wounded. Jiwon herself came aboard, carefully navigating through damaged corridors to reach the bridge. When she saw Captain Soman, battered and bleeding but still sitting in her command chair, Jiwon shook her head in amazement. How did you survive? Soman looked at the older woman with respect. This ship was built for one thing, to take damage and keep fighting. Modern ships are like precision instruments, beautiful but fragile. IRON-13 is a hammer. You can break parts of a hammer, but the hammer still works. The Council is going to be very unhappy about this. Let them be unhappy. We stopped an invasion with 1 ship. 1 old ship that they wanted humanity to scrap decades ago. Daehyun's voice came over the comm. Captain, I've stabilized the main systems. We're not going anywhere fast, but we won't fall apart. This beautiful monster will make it home. Soman smiled. See, Iron never forgets how to endure. Far away in Drathan space, the 7 surviving ships jumped out of faster-than-light travel near their home fleet. Their captains immediately began composing their reports, trying to explain how 15 warships had been beaten by a single human vessel, how an obsolete relic had destroyed 8 of their finest ships. War Prince Corvin was dead, his flagship destroyed. The political consequences would be severe. But more importantly, the Dragon Empire had learned something important about humanity. They weren't the weakest member of the Council. They were survivors who knew how to build things that lasted, and they knew how to use them. The news spread quickly through Council space. Ambassador Hyejin, representing humanity at the Galactic Council, found herself suddenly facing very different attitudes. Where before there had been condescension and dismissal, now there was caution and respect. When questioned about IRON-13 and its use of barbaric pre-contact weapons, she replied simply, "The ship is 60 years old and used technology you consider obsolete. If a museum piece can destroy 8 modern warships, imagine what we could build today if we weren't trying to match your design specifications." The council chamber was very quiet after that statement. IRON-13 began the long journey home, escorted by G1's squadron. The damaged dreadnought moved slowly, parts of it still glowing from heat damage. But it moved under its own power, its crew working constantly to keep systems running. On the bridge, Soman looked at her battered ship and her injured crew. They had won, but the cost had been high. 47 people dead, the ship severely damaged. But they had proven something important. They had shown the galaxy that humanity belonged in the stars, and they had done it the human way, with stubborn determination and iron that never forgot how to endure. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. IRON-13 limped through space, its damaged hull visible from thousands of kilometers away. Parts of the forward section were simply gone, torn away by weapons fire and the collision with the Eternal Fire. But the ship's core was intact, and it moved under its own power. Inside, the crew worked around the clock to keep systems running. Chief Engineer Daehyun and his teams performed miracles with damaged equipment, routing power around broken conduits and welding patches over hull breaches. The work was hard and dangerous, done mostly in zero gravity because life support could barely maintain atmosphere, much less artificial gravity. Captain Somin spent the journey visiting every section of the ship. Her arm was in a medical cast and her ribs were wrapped, but she insisted on seeing everyone. She spoke with the injured in the makeshift medical bay. She helped the engineering teams where she could, and she personally visited the sealed section where the bodies of the 47 dead crew members were stored, wrapped in thermal blankets and waiting for proper burial. Each night she recorded messages to their families. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. How do you explain to someone that their loved one died on a 60-year-old ship, brought out of retirement to fight a battle that nobody thought could be won? But she did it anyway because it was her responsibility. News of the battle had spread across human space and beyond. The story changed depending on who told it. Some versions made IRON-13 sound like an invincible superweapon. Others focused on the casualties and called the mission a tragedy. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity had won a victory that should have been impossible. The Drathan Empire officially denied that any significant battle had occurred. They claimed that a minor border incident had been resolved diplomatically. But their actions spoke differently. Drathan ships pulled back from Council borders across multiple sectors. Their aggressive expansion suddenly stopped. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions to discuss what had happened. Many species were shocked that humanity had kept military vessels from their pre-contact wars. Some called for sanctions and demanded that all such ships be immediately destroyed. Others, seeing the political shift, stayed quiet. Ambassador Heejin found herself in a difficult position. She had to defend humanity's actions while also maintaining relationships with other council members. During one heated debate, a representative from the Vakari Republic demanded answers. Your species kept weapons of war hidden, in violation of your acceptance terms. These were not exploration vessels or defensive platforms. They were designed purely for destruction. Heejin stood before the council chamber representing all of humanity. She chose her words carefully. Yes, we kept them. Ships like IRON-13 were built during our darkest time, when we fought each other. They represent our capacity for violence, which is something we're not proud of. But they also represent our capacity to survive, to endure, to refuse to surrender even when facing extinction. The Drathans thought our modern fleet was weak, and they were right. But they made the mistake of thinking that weak ships meant weak people. She paused, looking around the chamber. We joined the council, hoping to move past our violent history. We adopted your ship designs, your technology, your philosophy of elegant warfare. But when the Dragon Empire threatened us, when they mocked our rust and our struggle, we remembered who we were. We're not just the species that builds beautiful ships. We're the species that survives. The debate continued for days, but ultimately the council could not agree on any meaningful action. The fact was that IRON-13 had operated legally within council space, defending assigned territory against aggression. And the ship's very existence had stabilized a dangerous situation. Back on Earth, preparations were being made for IRON-13's arrival. The ship was too damaged to land anywhere. Instead, it was directed to the lunar shipyards where it had been mothballed for 60 years. As the battered dreadnought approached, every ship in the area moved to give it space. Work crews stopped what they were doing to watch. Camera drones captured every angle. This moment would be in history books. Admiral Taman waited in the command center watching the displays. When IRON-13 finally docked, he felt something that surprised him. Pride, certainly. Relief that the crew had survived. But also sadness. The ship had done its job, but at great cost. Captain Somin was one of the last to disembark. Medical teams wanted to take her directly to the hospital, but she refused until all her crew were off first. When she finally stepped onto the docking platform, Taman was there to meet her. Captain Somin, you brought your ship home. What's left of it, sir? What's left is enough. You won a battle that changed everything. Somin looked at the Admiral with tired eyes. We lost 47 people. Was it worth it? Taman was quiet for a moment. I can't answer that. But I can tell you what happened because of their sacrifice. The Drathan Empire has withdrawn from aggressive operations. Other council species are treating humanity with new respect, and every human in the fleet stands a little taller now, knowing that we belong here. Then I hope they feel it was worth it, Soman said quietly, because I'm not sure I do yet. The funerals were held over the following week. Each of the 47 crew members was honored individually. Their families came from across Earth and the colonies. Some were angry, demanding to know why their loved ones had been sent on such a dangerous mission. Others were proud, understanding that their sacrifice had meaning. The last funeral was for Ensign Doyun, a young engineering specialist who had been killed in the collision. He was only 23 years old. His mother spoke at the service. My son believed in what humanity could be. He volunteered for IRON-13 knowing it was dangerous, because he wanted to prove that we deserved our place among the stars. I'm angry that he's gone, but I'm also proud he was part of something bigger than himself. Captain Soman attended every funeral. She shook hands with every family member. She answered their questions as honestly as she could. It was exhausting and painful, but she owed them that much. After the funerals, Admiral Taman called Soman to a private meeting. He showed her the plans for IRON-13's future. We've decided not to fully repair it, he explained. Instead, we're going to keep it as it is with the battle damage visible. It will become the flagship of Earth's home defense fleet, stationed where every visiting ship can see it. Why? Soman asked. Because it tells a story. Modern ships can be destroyed. Advanced technology can fail. But human stubbornness, human engineering, human refusal to quit, those things endure. We want everyone who visits Earth to see IRON-13 and understand what it means. What does it mean? That we're not the newest or most advanced species in the Council, but we're survivors. And if you push us, we'll push back with everything we have. Over the following months, IRON-13 was partially restored. The critical systems were repaired so the ship could move under its own power. Life support was brought back to full capacity. But the battle damage remained visible. The torn armor plates stayed torn. The scorched hull section stayed scorched. The ship was turned into a living memorial to its final battle. Visitors to Earth's orbital space would see the massive dreadnought and ask about it. The story of the battle became famous, spreading beyond Council space. Other species began to reconsider their opinions of humanity. Captain Soman retired from active service. Her injuries from the battle had ended her career on starships. But she found a new purpose as the curator of IRON-13, giving tours and telling the story of what happened. She made sure that every tour included time at the memorial plaque that listed the names of the 47 crew members who died. Iron never forgets, she would tell visitors. And neither does Earth. The battle had another effect that nobody expected. Human shipbuilders, inspired by IRON-13's success, began designing a new generation of vessels. These ships incorporated advanced technology but followed the philosophy of the old dreadnought. Redundant systems, thick armor, simple but effective weapons, and the ability to take tremendous damage and keep fighting. Admiral Taman stood on the observation deck, watching the construction of the first of these new ships. It was bigger than IRON-13, using modern materials and technology. But the design philosophy was clear. This was not a graceful exploration vessel. This was a warship built to endure and to hit back. He thought about War Prince Corvin's last words during the battle. The Drathan leader had called IRON-13 a museum piece, outdated and obsolete. He was wrong. The ship wasn't obsolete. It was a reminder of what humanity had been, and what they could become again if necessary. The new ship was named Soman's Hammer, after the captain who had proven that old iron could still win battles. When the Dragon Empire learned about the new human warships, they filed a formal protest with the Galactic Council, claiming that Earth was engaged in aggressive militarization. The council held a hearing. Ambassador Hiejin stood before the chamber once again. The Drathan Empire claims we are militarizing. They're correct. We are building ships designed for war, but we're doing it because they taught us an important lesson. Peace is only maintained when potential aggressors understand the cost of aggression. The Dragon Empire thought we were weak, and they paid for that assumption with 8 ships and hundreds of lives. A council member asked, "Are you threatening other species?" "No," Hiejin replied. "We're promising them. If you want peace with humanity, you'll have it. We're happy to trade, to share knowledge, to work together. But if you want war, if you think our rust and our struggle make us easy targets, then you'll discover what the Drathans learned. We're survivors. We build things to last, and we don't forget. The Council took no action. The political reality had shifted. Humanity was no longer seen as the weakest Council member. They were seen as dangerous if provoked, and best left as peaceful partners rather than enemies. Years passed. IRON-13 remained at the lunar shipyards, a monument that never stopped attracting visitors. Young officers from Earth's fleet would visit it before their first assignments, touching the scarred armor for good luck. Veterans would come to pay respects to the crew who had died there. Captain Soman grew old giving her tours. She watched as human ship designs evolved, always carrying forward the lessons of IRON-13. She saw the fleet grow stronger, more respected. She saw diplomatic relationships improve as other species realized that humanity had earned its place. One day, a young Drathan visited the ship. He was a student studying military history. He stood before the memorial plaque, reading the names of the dead. "My uncle died in this battle," he said quietly to Soman. "He served on the Eternal Fire. I wanted to see the ship that defeated him." Soman looked at the young Drathan. "I'm sorry for your loss." "I'm not," the student said. "My uncle was a warrior. He died in combat against a worthy opponent. There is honor in that, but I had to see this ship to understand how one old vessel defeated our fleet." "Would you like to know?" Soman asked. "Yes, please." Soman led him through the corridors, explaining the design philosophy, the thick armor, the simple weapons, the redundant systems. The Drathan student listened carefully, taking notes. At the end of the tour, he asked, "Why did your people keep this ship? Why not destroy it after the war?" Soman thought about that question. "Because someone knew we might need to remember who we were. Before we tried to be like everyone else, we were survivors. This ship represents that. It's a reminder that our strength isn't in copying others. It's in being ourselves." The Drathan student nodded slowly. "I understand. Thank you for showing me this." After he left, Soman returned to the memorial plaque. She read the names as she did every day. 47 people who had believed in something worth fighting for. 47 people who had proven that humanity belonged among the stars. The ship's motto was still visible on the bulkhead. "Iron never forgets." Below it, carved in careful letters, was the addition that had been made after the battle. "And neither does Earth." Soman touched the plaque gently. "We remember," she said quietly. "We always remember." Outside the viewport, Earth turned slowly, beautiful and blue. Around it floated the new fleet, strong and ready. Ships built on the lessons learned from an old dreadnought that refused to die. The Dragon Empire never tested human borders again. They had learned their lesson. Other species watched and learned it too. Humanity had proven something important. They weren't the most advanced species. They didn't have the best technology. But they had something more valuable. They had the will to fight with whatever they had, the engineering to make sure it was enough, and the memory to never forget why they fought. IRON-13 waited in the darkness, scarred but still intact, still broadcasting on all frequencies. Its reactor still hummed, ready to wake if needed. It was a monument, a warning, and a promise. Iron never forgets, and neither does Earth.